So in my last video, I talked about marriage, divorce. As I told you guys, I'm writing a book on marriage and the divorce rates, and I'm doing a lot of research, right? So just want to drop some gems real quick, something I've picked up real quick. So I noticed, right, that in the 1950s, in American history, in the 1950s, was that decade was considered the most successful time. That period was the most successful time for marriages. Like, not just marriages, but the family unit, the nuclear family, which was traditional man, woman, child. Multiple, it could be multiple children. It doesn't have to just be one. It could be children, plural. But the nuclear family unit, that structure was the strongest during the 50s. So as I saw that, I'm doing research and as the solution as to why was that, like, what was going on in the 50s, what created that, what were the economic environments, what were the what variables were there to keep that family structure in place. Like, families went to church more, families sat at dinner tables more. Like, what was different? And what I found was that it was at the, this was on the tail end, well, not the tail end, but it was at the end of the war. World War II had just ended in 1945-ish, 46-ish, right? So the war had just ended. The economy was somewhat resilient. Yes, it was resilient, because by this time we had came out of the Great Depression, policies, all those, Roosevelt instituted all those policies that had the economy, kind of back on the uptrend. So economically things were fine. But what wasn't in place was the 1960s, right? Those progressive politics and policies, and all these rights that were geared towards feminism, right? There were a lot of rights that came out of the 60s era that pushed feminist agenda. Now, I'm a feminist. I have a daughter, so I want my daughter to have her rights and freedoms. I want her to be able to compete in the marketplace, et cetera, et cetera. But there was something that I noticed, right? There were those extreme, far, more clandestine and subtle policies or agendas by feminists that destabilize marriages. They were I read these things. I've been reading these things. There were quotes that specifically said, for the liberation of women, marriages needs to be dissolved. And I was like, whoa. So that was embedded in all the whole movement. You had 1, 2, and 3 waves. So within the waves of this movement of feminism, you had these policies, these beliefs, these ideologies where, for a woman to be liberated, she can't be married. And I was like, whoa. So, and then in the 70s, right? In the 70s, the divorce rate you had some of the highest divorce rates. So in the 50s, you had the lowest. By the 70s, you had the highest. So in the 50s, you had the lowest, right? In the 60s, you had the policies, and by the 70s, you had the highest. So I'm looking at what was going on. What were the variables, right? And where, so it's interesting. It's just interesting stuff. So I'll keep you guys up to date on when the book is going to be ready and what's going to be out. I think it's going to be a very fascinating read. I also think I'm going to catch a lot of backlash, but I want all the smoke. You know what I'm saying? Bring it. Peace.